You ever wake up knowing you're about to make a mistake? Not the I wore mismatched socks kind of mistake, but the I'm about to lose my life savings and a little bit of my dignity kind of mistake? That was me on the morning of my dowry negotiations and engagement ceremony. My name's Edwin, and let me take you through one of the most bizarre, nerve-wracking, hilarious, and heartbreaking days of my life. Because you see, I went to a dowry ceremony to claim the love of my life, Faith. But by noon, I was in a matatu to Nairobi, phone off, heart racing, leaving behind a tent full of angry elders. Let's rewind and start from the beginning. I went to the University of Nairobi where I met a wonderful girl. She had everything I could ever dream about. I enjoyed every bit of time I spent with her. We used to enjoy strolling about at Uhuru Park, the meal times on the university mess, and living together in Roysambu. Life was good. From day one, I knew she was the one I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. We had something real, something solid, and I was ready to make it official. After we finished school at the university, I was lucky to get a job. Consider me lucky, because so many of my classmates are still without one. So, automatically, I wanted to move to the next stage in life, marriage. Thank God I had a girl. As I tell this story, I smile at the thought of the sweet experiences. I wanted to do right by her family, so I saved up, prepared, and planned for this day with everything I had. She was from another tribe. As you may imagine, my parents were a little laid back and hesitant to give me approval since this was not something they were accustomed to. But I wanted to be the one to break the barriers. Being a guy from one community to a different one for dowry negotiations, I knew there would be a few cultural differences. I even prepared by watching all sorts of YouTube videos on their culture, reading up on dowry customs, and getting tips from my uncles who had been there, done that. My pockets were heavy, but my heart was even heavier. After all, they say marriage isn't just about the couple, but about two families uniting. On the day of the ceremony, I brought the village to a standstill. You see, an engagement ceremony in my community is a big deal. Everything stops. Everyone wanted to go. All my aunts, uncles, and of course, the neighbors. The cows would not be milked that day since all the women had gone to my engagement. But this was our tradition, how we did things, what made life what it is, who we were. I had planned to get the best ceremonial suits for my crew of 5. These were my guys, the boys I had grown up with, circumcised with. It was our day to shine. We even had our designated vehicle, so we picked up our ceremonial sticks and headed out. We had agreed on a reasonable dowry amount with her family, Kenya shillings 60,000 for the bride price. I thought, this is fair. A little steep maybe, but fair. Besides that, I'd already shelled out Kenya shillings 40,000 for the setup. Tents, chairs, public address system, the whole 9 yards. I thought I was prepared. Little did I know this was just the beginning. When we finally arrived at Faith's family home in a beautiful hilly and forested village, surrounded by coffee plantations, the first thing I felt was tension. You could cut it with a knife. My uncles proceeded to greet the elders. Like the young men we were, me and my crew made sure to show respect. And just as I was settling down, I had a rumor among my uncles that there is an additional fine for what you and Faith did. My Uncle Sam said in a tone that was half judgment, half resignation. Did what? I stammered, feeling a trickle of sweat slide down my back. You know, the child. My heart sank. Yes, Faith and I were already expecting, but we were planning to tie the knot soon. I thought her family understood that this was part of the reason we wanted to make things, official. But no, an extra Kenya shilling 20,000 is what I paid for this, even before we started negotiations. I thought I could talk my way out of it, but after a few glares from the aunties, I sighed, reached for my wallet, and handed over the cash. This was just a minor bump, I told myself. Wrong. The ceremony was supposed to begin with a grand entrance to Faith's home. When my family, Her family and even a few neighbors were all gathered. I remembered that in all the excitement, however, my Uncle Peter, who was navigating, accidentally took a wrong turn. Instead of arriving at her family's home, we ended up in the compound of a perplexed neighbor who eyed us as if we'd dropped out of the sky. By the time we arrived at the correct homestead, we were greeted with a disapproving glare from the elders. Another fine of Kenya shillings 10,000. I argued that it was an honest mistake, but they were quick to remind me of tradition. I was to respect the family's time and honor their hospitality. I knew better than to fight this one. But it was starting to dawn on me. This was going to be one long day. Then came the keeping the elders waiting fee. To add salt to the wound, our detour had made us a few minutes late. Only 15 minutes, tops. But for the Council of Elders, this was apparently an eternity. 4 elders, lined up like judges, informed me that my tardiness had wearied their spirits and that a symbolic Kenya shilling 5,000 was required to appease them. The look on my uncle's face was priceless. I could see him wanting to burst out laughing, but he kept his composure. This wasn't a comedy club, it was a dowry negotiation. I fished out the money, my wallet already feeling a lot lighter. If you think it was over, you are wrong. I hope you enjoy this story so far. Please like, share, and subscribe for more enlightening stories. Then came the bride guessing game. Finally, it was time to meet Faith. Or so I thought. I was ready to see her, to finally hold her hand and look into her eyes while our families watched on approvingly. But instead, I was led to the middle of the courtyard, where a row of 12 women, each covered from head to toe in loose lessos, stood waiting. "Guess your bride," Faith's aunt announced with a gleeful glint in her eye. I couldn't believe it. Was this for real? I glanced down the line of women, trying to spot Faith. Each one was wrapped up so tightly I couldn't see anything but their eyes, and Faith was smart. She knew I'd have no idea. I walked down the line, squinting, trying to catch a hint of perfume or recognize her posture. Then an idea struck me: their shoes. But they all had the same rubber shoes. The Batan Goma, as if famously known, a shoe synonymous with most Kenyan women in the villages. Sweat poured down my face. I felt my body heating up and my heart beating fast. I knew I was in a tough place, but I had to choose. Amidst everyone looking at me with faces of excitement, my crew seemed tensed as they saw me get confused, unsure what to do. I pointed to the third girl on the left, feeling pretty confident. Silence. Then, a chorus of laughter exploded around me. Wrong woman. And the penalty for this misstep? A solid Kenya shilling 15,000. Leave alone the fact that I had to repeat this again. At this point, I was holding onto my composure by a thread. I had lost so much money over petty fines that I was beginning to question if I'd be able to afford lunch tomorrow. Still, I told myself I'd get through it, but then came the final blow. The chief spokesperson, a man with a booming voice and an expression so serious it could have made anyone shiver, stood up. "Edwin, we thank you for all you've provided so far. But before you can take our daughter, there is one last matter we must discuss." I braced myself. He continued, "We raised this girl from birth, educated her, clothed her, fed her, took her to the best schools. Now, as she's going to be your wife, it's only fair that you repay us for the years of effort and care. You'll pay for her upbringing. Kenya shillings 500,000 should suffice." Silence, complete silence. 500,000 shillings for childhood upkeep. I could barely breathe. I looked around, my family as stunned as I was. My Uncle Peter was shaking his head, murmuring, "Kijana, this is not a marriage, this is a bank robbery." I stood there frozen, then slowly I forced a smile, nodded and told them, "I need to use the latrine." I went across the field to a latrine at the corner of the field. If you think I was going to help myself, you are wrong. I sped towards the nearby bush, then joined the road. As I walked away, I pulled out my phone, my hands trembling, and switched it off. I could hear Faith's aunt calling after me, but I didn't turn back. My feet found the road, and before I knew it, I was sitting in the back of a matatu, headed straight to Nairobi. Looking back, I realized a few things. I believe in love, I believe in marriage, and I respect tradition. But there's a line. Somewhere in all the fines and fees, I felt like the meaning of what we were doing had been lost. It was no longer about two people in love or even two families joining together. It was a transaction, an extortion scheme disguised as tradition. And here's the truth. Tradition is beautiful, but some traditions seem to come with their own tax codes. For anyone reading this, if you're about to go through dowry negotiations, my advice is simple. Keep your heart open, respect the elders, and stay sharp. Take a deep breath before each fine, nod politely, and maybe even chuckle, because that might be all that keeps you from losing your mind. And one last piece of advice, when they start talking about childhood upkeep fees, just excuse yourself, nod to the elders and say, "Thank you for raising her well," because that's worth every shilling. But keep a matatu fare handy just in case tradition takes too big a bite out of your wallet. After all, there's always a matatu to Nairobi ready and waiting. But do not be like me. I have yet to get married. At 35, I am still afraid of dowry negotiations. I get traumatized when I remember the day. Maybe I will marry when I am 40. As they say, I am aging like fine wine. But let's be honest, some traditions need a syllabus review. Tell me what you think in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please like, share, and subscribe for more enlightening stories.